Alright, so the next deck that we're going to talk about is going to be the Elves deck, and this is a Ruby Wild deck, and currently right now, Ruby Wild is fairly strong. There was just recently a tournament done, and of course Ruby Wild was made majority of the top 8, and it's made the top 8 of some other tournaments as well. And some people aren't too happy about it because they say Ruby Wild is way too powerful with a card called, I think it's Tatiana's Majesty, I believe is what it is. So, you know, if you want to go that route, you want to do some net decking, you know, maybe you could pick this deck up and build it to one of those decks there. But all in all, this deck isn't too terribly bad right out of the box. I don't mind it at all for 500 platinum. You know, if it would be, you know, if I were to have to choose between this deck and the Orcs, I'd probably still pick the Orcs, but this is definitely a close second to that one. So let's get into the cards here. First of all, we have Baby Yeti. It's speed 1/1, 1/1 for 1. Then we have Lyricalist. It is two casting costs, 1/2 troop, and at the start of your turn you gain 1 temporary resource. There's 3 of those. We have Emberleaf Duelist, 2 casting costs, 2/1 troop, and it says while this is attacking, it has Swift Strike. And we talked about Swift Strike before. Swift Strike is one of those mechanics or abilities on a card that is very powerful. Basically, your opponent has to one-up your card all the time. It can't be equal. So it's, you know, a two casting cost card that's 2/1 here can take out some pretty powerful troops. Given that, you know, even if he has a 4/1, 5/1, like I said, you know, it'll take it out no problem. Next card we have is Wild Child, just a 2/2 for 2. And then we have Stirring Oration, 2 casting cost, quick action. Target troop gets +2/+2 this turn. If you control a card with cost 5 or greater, that troop gets an additional +3/+3. Let's see what else we got here. Let's scroll down a little bit. Nellybrin Skirmisher. I think that's how you pronounce that. Nellybrin Skirmisher. 3 casting costs, 2/1. It's a Sockable Miner. It says when this deals damage to an opposing champion, it gets +1/+1. So if you can get this guy through, he's gonna keep buffing himself. Again, since we're in Wild, you can put a gem in him that gives him +1/+1 right out of the gate. So he'd be a 3/2. Many ways you can go with that one. Next card we have here is from Armies of Myth, Playing with Fire. It's a constant. It says when you play a card with cost 5 or greater, deal 2 damage to target champion or troop. Now, I think that's quite a few of these cards are 5 or greater. Yeah, there's quite a few of them. Not as many as I would like, but you know, there's not a lot in this deck to ramp you up quickly. Next one here we have is Emberleaf War Dancer. It's 5 casting costs, 4/3 troop with Crush. And it has a one-shot ability for 7 resources. This gets +2/+2. Not a card I would probably keep in the deck. There's far better cards out there than this one. So if you were to pick this deck, this would probably be one of the first ones I would take out. Next one we have is Ambershire Instigator. 5 casting costs, double wild. It's 2/4. Has Rage 2 and Crush. So that's not horrible. You know, not the best, but again, it meets that 5 casting cost just like the Emberleaf War Dancer does, so it can help you out. Next one we have here is Dynamite. 7 casting cost, double wild, basic action. It says target troop gets +5/+5 Crush, and when this dies, create a Smashadon and put it into play. I believe a Smashadon is I think it's a 5/5 or a 7/7. I think it's a 5/5. I'll put it up on the screen here. Let's see here. We have just one of those. Next card we have is Tribal Warfare. Now I think this is kind of one of the cards you want to get to. Now I don't know if you want to get to it quickly, but you want to definitely have this mid-game to later game because it is a quick action. It says target troop you control and all troops you control that share a trait with it you can exhaust that troop, and this deals damage equal to its attack to another target troop this turn. So you could use this to basically clear the board if you wanted to. Which you probably would. Let's see what else we got here. The next one we have is Wrathwood Lark. 6 casting costs, 4/6. Again, it's one of those cards that's going to help you out that are 5 or greater. And there's a couple options with this card. You can either play it, or you can discard it and create a wild shard. If you're a little bit short on a wild threshold, you can pay 2, discard it to create a wild shard and get it into your hand anyway. What else do we have here? Sky Dancer, 3 casting cost, double wild. He's got Sky Guard. He is a 1/4. This is at the start of your turn. If you have a card with cost 5 or greater in your hand, you can gain 1 temporary resource. So therefore, we've got 2 cards now in our hand that can give us the ramp ability there, the Lith Lyricalist and that one. I think that's the only 2 so far. Yeah, Lith Lyricalist and Sky Dancer. The next one we have is Ageless Troubadour. I think that's how you pronounce that. It says at the start of your turn, gain 1 temporary resource for each elf you control. Now this deck is heavy elves, so if you have a lot of elves out on the board, you're going to gain a temporary resource for that. So you got Lith Lyricalist is an elf, Emberleaf Duelist is an elf, Wild Child's an elf, Stirring Orations is a quick action, the Niebling Skirmisher, he's an elf, the Ambushire Instigator elf. So there's a lot of elves that'll help you hit this. Again, there's only 1, but you can change that obviously. And the next one here we have again is an elf, and it's a Niebling Tree Guard. It's a 4 casting cost 4/3 troop. So that's the elf deck there. Like I said, it's not a horrible deck. I think it's better than most of these here. Again, like I said, I don't, between the dwarves, the orcs, and the elves, that's where I'm at right now. I do like Shin here, but I don't like them right now. I don't think they're not quite there. I think they need a little more work. Hopefully they'll eventually get there. The Coyotes are getting there. Again, that prophecy though, it's just too much RNG, I think. Alright, so the next deck we're going to talk about is the Necrotic deck. Now, Necrotic is all about shifting powers from cards. You may not be familiar with the shift ability, and we'll get to that in just a second. Let's go ahead and start with some of the cards here. Spirit-Bound Spy, 1 casting cost, 1/1 troop. When it dies, turn it into a phantom and put it into play. A phantom is just a 1/1 flyer. Next card we have here is Grim Skull Sorcerer, 2 casting cost, 1/2 Sockable Miner. See what you got. You could put Swift Strike in here. I forget all the gems. I don't have them all memorized, but this isn't a horrible card. In limited, he was decent in limited for a 2-drop. Next one we have here is Deep Gaze Acolyte, and this one is a 2 casting cost 2/1, and it says when a power is shifted onto this gets +1/+1. So then we have Gem Soul Feeder, 3 casting cost, single blood, 2/2, and it has the shift ability, and what you can do is you can spend 1 resource point and you can shift the life drain ability from Gem Soul Feeder. Let's say you shift it onto Deep Gaze Acolyte, and now Deep Gaze Acolyte will now be a 3/2. And when you do that, that ability goes away. It's kind of like a one-shot. So even though life drain is normally a keyword that's in green, if the keyword there is not in green, it's going to go with it when you shift it off. So you got 3 of those. Then we have Deep Gaze Disciple, 4 casting cost 2/3, and it has flight, and it says when a power is shifted onto a troop you control, this gets +1/+1. So the synergy with this deck here is about shifting powers around, doing it in a way where you maximize the benefit of each power that you shift. So on the technical level, this would probably be a little higher than most, just to be able to set that up and be able to do it right. But if you do it right, I'm pretty sure that it could be a pretty powerful deck. I said I like shifting. I like shifting powers around. Last month in the VIP, it was sealed, and a couple decks I played. Not in the sealed tournament. Was it in the sealed tournament? Yeah, it was in the sealed tournament. A couple decks the deck I played had some shifting abilities into it, and it worked out really well. Shifting is pretty good in limited or in drafting. You just can't always bank on having a lot of abilities like this to be able to benefit from shifting an ability, but you still get those cards that can shift that power around. What do we got next here? Sepulture Stalwart, and you can he's a 4 casting cost, double diamond, 3/3, and you can shift Steadfast onto something else. If you're not familiar with Steadfast, it basically doesn't tap or exhaust when you attack with it. What do we have next here? Duskwing Reclaimer, 5 casting cost, single blood, 2/4 with flight, and says when this enters play, void target troop in an opposing graveyard, choose and gain a threshold you don't have. So it's kind of a threshold fixer / troop card. Next one we have here is Paladin of Nagan. It is just a 5 casting cost, double diamond, 3/5, no text there at all. It's an okay. What do we have next? Shard Call. 1 casting cost, basic action, create a standard resource of your choice and put it into your hand. So two resource fixers there so far. And next we have Shard Ward. Shard Ward is choose a shard, prevent all damage that would be dealt to you and troops you control by cards of the chosen shard this turn. So if you are gonna lose and somebody's attacking with you with all Sapphire, let's say, choose Sapphire, all that damage gets prevented that turn by another turn. Maybe you can find the answer you need to close out the game. Next one here we have is Vampiric Kiss, 3 casting cost, 1 blood, quick action, deal 2 damage to target champion or troop, gain health equal to the damage dealt this way. And the next card we have here is a 5 casting cost, 5/3, single blood. It has its card text is you can shift. When this dies, put it into your hand, it will get cost +2/+2. So if you want to shift that onto something you want to keep around, let's say maybe the Duskwing Reclaimer, you want to shift that around. That's going to be pretty expensive to bring back up. Maybe the Gem Soul Feeder, you want to put that, get that back since it has life drain. You can shift that around. Probably want to bring back a card that has shift, so you can reuse the shift ability again. Next card we have here is Warlock of a Tier, 3 casting cost, double blood, 1/1, and its shift ability is sacrifice another troop. This gets +2/+2 this turn, so you can shift that onto something. This, if you were going to play a Shinhair deck, this might not be a bad card to put in the Shinhair deck, so you can sacrifice those Shinhairs easily, then get +2/+2, on something else. Next one we have is Deep Gaze Champion, 3 casting cost, single diamond, 3/3, and it says when a power is shifted onto a troop you control, each troop you control gets +1/+1. So again, maximizing the shift abilities, while you have whatever's on the board, if you can maximize that, I think that's what, that is what this deck is geared towards. And figuring that out, doing it, right every time, that's the challenge. And the last one here is Martyr. It's a 2 casting cost, single diamond, quick action. You can transform a target troop into a monument of Martyr. And I forget what a monument of Martyr is right now. I'll put it up on the screen again. Don't worry about it. So, wish I could remember. So yeah, that is the Necrotic deck. Again, not a bad deck. I like the shift ability. I like that one far better than Prophecy. Let's see. The last and final deck that we're going to talk about is this Venom deck. Now, this deck I probably wouldn't pick up. It's all about creating spiders, and spiders are cool. I played them. That was what my sealed deck was in the VIP tournament. It was all about spiders, but there's just some cards missing in this deck that it just doesn't work, and it doesn't work very well in constructed. Just because there's obviously more cards, and granted the spider deck isn't really based around mill. I mean, it is, but it isn't. You have to mill your opponent to find those spiders, but it just seems to work better in 40 card decks than it does in 60 card decks. But let's go ahead and just go through the cards here. First one is Hatchery Priest, 1 casting cost, 0/2 troop, and you can exhaust him. You can create a spiderling for each opposing champion, put it into their deck. Next one is 2 casting cost, 1/1, Rune Web Infiltrator. It has flight and says when this deals damage to an opposing champion, create 2 spider eggs for that champion, put them into their deck. So if you're on curve, you drop a Hatchery Priest, and then you'll drop down maybe a Rune Web Infiltrator, or you can drop down an Exart of the Egg. It's a 2 casting cost, 1/3. It has lethal. If you're not familiar with lethal, any amount of damage dealt by this troop here will kill the other troop no matter what. So like cards that actually take their damage and deal it to somebody else, like that last card we're talking about, where you can exhaust your cards to deal their damage to another troop. Something like that lethal would kill it right away. Even though it would do only 1 damage, it would kill it because it's all lethal. But anyway, it says when this or another venom enters play under your control, create 2 spider eggs for each opposing champion and put them into their decks. And you have a giant spider pawn. It is a spider, and it says so when another venom enters play. This here is not a venom. There are cards in here. There's a card in here that says when a spider enters play, do something, so we'll get to that one. Okay, Giant Spider Pawn, forecasting cost 4/2, not a good card at all, but it's in the deck. Arachnomancer, here it is. When a spider enters play under your control, you may draw a card. So this is a 5 casting cost, double sapphire, 3/3. Expensive, it's a 3/3, and he is a venom, so he will synergize with that, and then the spider spawn here would synergize with that, and all the spiders that you would pull from your opponent's deck would also synergize with this here too. So you can see the synergy here is all about spiders. Next card we have here is Hatchery Broodguard, 6 casting cost, 1 blood threshold, 4/5, and it says when this enters play, create 6 spiderling eggs for each opposing champion, put them into their deck. So you have 3 of those. Then we have Incubate, 1 casting cost, basic action, create 3 spider eggs for each opposing champion, put them into their deck. Then we have Mind Rake, 5 casting cost, 1 blood threshold, basic action, target troop you control, choose target troop you control. Each troop you control that shares a trait with the chosen troop gets, you can exhaust it. Each opposing champion chooses and discards a card this turn. So most of these cards here are venom. So I'd probably, if you're going to play that card, choose a card that has venom on it, because most of them are going to share that trait, because most of these are venom. Next one we got here, Roddy Knight, 3 casting cost, double blood, 2/1, socketable major, and it says when this is socketed with a minor gem, this has +1/+1. I've never played this card with a major gem in it. I've always used a minor gem, so we got that +1/+1 ability. So a 3 casting cost, 3/2 isn't as bad, even though some of the major gems are obviously better. That's just what I did in limited anyway. Next one here we got is 4 casting cost, double sapphire. It's an incubation webs. It's a basic action, and its card text is localization failure. I don't know what that means. Anyway, exhaust target opposing troop. It gets, at the start of your turn, exhaust this, then create a spiderling egg and put it into your hand. I'm wondering if that is not an error on the card, like something is supposed to be there. Localization failure isn't anything that I know of. I don't know. Maybe it's not supposed to be there. Next one we have here is Parafagi, I don't know. 5 casting cost, double blood, basic action, to destroy target opposing troop, create 4 spiderling eggs for that troop's controller and put them into their deck. So this is a removal card. It's an expensive removal card, but it is a removal card, and it could save your butt. What do we got left? We have Dementia Daisies. This was a pretty cool card in limited when Shattered Destiny came out, especially in draft, if you could draft a few of these. And it is a 3 casting cost, 0/4 defensive, so it can attack, but when you gain a charge, bury the top 2 cards of your opposing champion's deck. And this is the part of where the mill comes into play, so you have to mill your opponent. This is the only way I believe you have to mill your opponent. I think in this deck is the only way to do it, is with Dementia Daisies. Problem is there's only, what, 20, let's see, there's 4, 9, 13, 14, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25 shard, 25 resources in here. And that's the only way to mill it. You have to have them out first, so you're going to lose out on 3 at least. So you get down to 22. You see where I'm going with this. You want to bring in another way to mill your opponent other than Dementia Daisies. Next card, Egg Blight Afflictor. This can't block. When this dies, create 4 spider eggs for each opposing champion, put them in their deck. 2 casting cost, 2/1 troop. Next one here is Pain Breeder. Well, I take that back. Nope, that's just draw a card. I'm sorry. I was thinking about, for some reason, I thought this here, when this enters play, you may draw a card. That would work well if you had Twisted Fate. See, now Twisted Fate is when you draw a card, your opponent draws a card. So that would be an option if you wanted to. Anyway, Pain Breeder. When a spider enters play under your control, it gets +1/+1. So you want to have these out once your spiders start entering into play. If you're not familiar with what a spider is, it's just a 1/1 spider that's unblockable. And then the final card we have here is a 7 casting cost, double sapphire threshold, 5/8, Harbinger of Hastor. It says when this attacks, exhaust up to 5 target troops. If you have at least one Sapphire threshold met, there's a 20% chance at the start of each opposing champion's turn, if this is in the top 5 cards of your deck, reveal it, exhaust a random opposing troop. So that ability is kind of just a bonus, an added bonus, I guess. You know, you can't really bank on that. You can't build around it. But again, when this attacks, if you can get this guy out when he attacks, you know, he can exhaust 5 other troops, and he can push through 5 damage, and he's got a big butt on him, so he's got 8 defense there, so not bad. So that is the Venom deck, and that is all of the starter decks. Again, if I were to pick one, you know, Necrotic, I do like Shift. I think you can build a pretty shifty, nifty deck around Shift there if you can do it right. It's a very, I would say it's more technical than the others. You know, you got to be able to do that right, be able to execute them in the right way. Otherwise, orcs, you know, orcs are pretty decent in the arena. There's obviously some orcs you have to pull out, or some cards you have to pull out and put some other cards in there. Orcs is pretty good for arena. Like I said, people say, you know, dwarves are powerful. They can be. You'll pull out some cards and put in Volcanon in there if you can get your hands on a Volcanon and maybe use that in arena. I don't see too many dwarf decks really in constructed that are making any news anyway. So I mean, really, it's going to be entirely up to you and what deck you want. Like I said, if it were me, I would go with either Necrotic or the Orc deck. Definitely stay away from humans, Shinhair. Said if you want to go with the Wild Ruby deck, you know, get the elves and then start building that deck out. So those are the decks. So now let's go back into our game and choose one and choose our name and get started with the actual tutorial. Alright, back into the game here. So this is where we choose what deck we want. Now that we know what's actually in the decks, choosing them will be a little bit easier. So like I said, I'm going to go ahead and pick the Necrotic deck. Now we go ahead and enter our account name here. What do we want our account name to be? Well, I'm just going to go, what do we pick here? Let's just choose From the Beginning. I think that's right. Yep, From the Beginning. And we got the Necrotic deck selected. We'll go ahead and create our account. Let it think on that for a little bit. It said get ready to battle. Get ready for the battle system tutorial. Click OK. So it immediately jumps right into the tutorial, and in the next video we'll go ahead and go through the tutorial, so stay tuned for that.